You have also spoken about how growing up a child in Washington D.C., you would get off the bus from your school bus and go look at your paintings.
Yes. Yes.
And some of your poems are, and especially when you write about Bearden, it's in some cases I wondered like if there are specific paintings that you are writing about. For example, the man with one eye bigger than the other one, the large ham hands.
Yeah.
So it seems like you had an upbringing where you are in the moment, but also you are in a family where you were able to also keep an objective distance. Do you feel that was a privileged position to be not be thrust into the turmoil of it, but experience it, but also be able to step back from it?
And the turmoil, not to be thrust into the turmoil of what exactly?
Of African American life's day-to-day struggle of it.
Well, that's an interesting. I'll break the pieces of your question down. There are so many things in that. In thinking about Bearden in particular, what's kind of interesting is that in that poem that you mentioned, which is called Bearden, it wasn't about one particular painting, because also I think to meditate on one painting, I wouldn't want to make a poem that was so static. So it was kind of taking a lot of pieces of Bearden from his Mecklenburg County pictures. And these are the pictures that were his childhood memory pictures of time that he spent in North Carolina when he was a child before his family moved to Pittsburgh and then to New York City. So that is his space of idyllic romance in a way, and visual romance are in those North Carolina paintings. So I think I'm just thinking of this now with your question, some analogs to what we've been speaking about with childhood and memory. I think the question about the being in or out of the turmoil of African American life, on the one hand, I mean, I don't hesitate to say that my childhood was loving, privileged, protected, endowed in so many ways, and in so many ways that were not necessarily about money per se, but that were about a cultural legacy, cultural exposure, being loved, being safe, all of those things. And one of the really terrific things about growing up in Washington is that the museums are all free. So you mentioned getting off to see my paintings. I mean, it was a huge thing that if I had to pay as a 12-year-old to go to the museum, I would not have gone to see a painting. It would have been a proper field trip that maybe you do it once a year and it's a big deal, but not that wonderful almost casual relationship of art that says it has a place in the everyday. It really is for everyone. It's for young people, as well as for what you might think of as, patrons of the arts. It gets used.
It grows with you and evolves with you.
It grows with you, and it has different meanings depending on, if a 12-year-old kid can get off the bus and go look at it, well, what does she see? And then what does the arts matron, if you imagine it, what does she see in that painting? So I think that's actually a really, really important thing about DC and about some other cities, but not so much now. I mean, I'm sort of horrified at what you have to pay to go to museums in New York.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's yes, they're doing the best they can, and they have free days and school days and so forth, but I think that maybe governments need to rethink what that does for communities. So yes, all of that bounty, all of that privilege, all of that security. But yet I think growing up as an aware and historically aware African American was with a sense of responsibility, which is how, not just my parents, but everybody in my family always operated with the ethos that you're supposed to share your gifts, that you're supposed to be a helpful person, that you're supposed to serve your community in some kind of way, that you're supposed to think about yourself in the context of a community, that you're not just an atom all by yourself, floating along with your family. So I think that what that gave me was a kind of a grave sense of trying to, by learning and teaching and writing and doing, engage with the struggle, with the particular abilities that I had. And you know, there was a sense too that it wasn't always a safe thing to be a black person in this country. I was very aware of that, and particularly through the work that my father did as a very outspoken person working for civil rights. You know, I mean, he would get death threats and, you know, all kinds of things like that. And we saw, you know, what happened to Medgar Evers in Mississippi, you know, gunned down in front of his children in his driveway because of being an NAACP organizer. And, you know, the NAACP was not an organization that was that we saw as being wild and radical. I mean, everybody we knew was involved with the NAACP. So that's all to say that there was a sense of proximity to, you know, the sometimes terrible costs of speaking out and doing that good work.
Yeah.
So.
And there's a beautiful poem that you write about how you know, I forget the exact words, hey blood.
Yeah,
you know, my father still says that sometimes. That poem just encapsulates so many things you were speaking to us about in terms of the, you know, being able to locate a moment in history, in memory, and being able to find its significance so many years down the road, and also have it be a very personal moment at the same time.
Well, that's such careful reading. Thank you. But also, I'm thinking again as you're saying this, because your questions are opening up things for me, about how that particular phrase, "Hey blood," which you know, I'm very interested in vernacular and black vernacular, and the ways that people talk and the incredible turns of phrase that you find if you're not just looking for language in literature, but you're also looking for it ambiently everywhere. And I think about something like "Hey blood," which is such a brilliant vernacularism because it's tossed off, it's cool, it's kind of fabulous.
Yeah.
But also, wow, what does it mean to see another black man, for a black man to see another black man in the street and to say blood?
Yeah.
You know, to invoke that as a way of saying, in this small moment, I connect to you.
Yes.
I think that's really beautiful.
It's violent, and also the question of blood brothership.
That's right. It's all in there. It's all in there.
It's
all of the ways that we connect.
Yeah, I mean, a
Or
poem
choose
like
to
that,
connect.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or many as like me reads that poem and their heart just skips a bit.
Oh, well.
It's such a great, you know, one of my favorite poems.